Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be diving deeper into our coolant system. We're going to be talking about the pressure cap as well as the expansion tank and the overflow tank. So to begin with today, we're going to be talking about the coolant itself, or aka antifreeze. It actually has some really amazing characteristics, which is why it works so great as an engine coolant. So first off, coolant actually expands when it gets heated up. Next, the coolant system is inside of a closed system. All that means is nothing comes in, nothing comes out, nothing gets burned. So it actually gains pressure while inside of the system. So now the cool thing about that is when coolant is under pressure, the temperature at which it boils is increased. So now that, coupled with the higher boiling point of the ethylene glycol, which is in the antifreeze, allows your vehicle to reach temperatures of up to about 250 degrees safely. So now to deal with all that pressure, this cap is not just any ordinary cap that has to top off the coolant tank. This is going to be a spring-loaded cap. So this is going to be pressurized, so you can see on the top here, it says there's a certain amount of PSI that's in there, which means it's pressurized. So make sure you do not open this when the vehicle is hot, because it will have a lot of pressure built up behind it. You have to let it cool down, and make sure you wipe this off first before you open it up so no contaminants get inside. But if you take it off, you can see that there's not just an ordinary cap. There's some different springs in there and a whole bunch of other little mechanisms. So the point of that is when the pressure gets too high built up in the engine, this will actually open up and allow some of the pressure out, so it will not overflow the system. That's what we're going to go into next. So now, in most modern vehicles, the radiator is mounted lower than the engine. And since it is mounted lower than the engine, it's going to need a pressure release and a fill point that is higher than the engine. And this will be accomplished with what they call an expansion tank. Now, if you have a vehicle where the engine is actually high enough to act as a fill point and a pressure relief, an expansion tank is not needed. Therefore, you might just be using what they call a recovery tank or overflow tank. So now the main difference is in an expansion tank, it is actually part of a pressurized system. You can tell this by looking at the cap like I showed you earlier, and it's going to show a PSI on it, which means it's under pressure. It's actually designed to have some extra space up there so that coolant has some room to expand to, such as under pressure. Also, it's designed like this to also have a fill point that's higher up that's easier to get to. Now in my Ford F-150, it's shaped like this. The reason it's shaped like that, one is to add strength to the structure, so it has like kind of walls in between those little pillow areas there. And then it also is so the coolant doesn't slosh around the whole way when you're going around corners. There's going to be little dividers in between each one of those, so it allows the coolant to only move just a little bit. So one of the neat things about the expansion tank is that, well, it builds up pressure. And with that pressure, it actually uses that pressure to force the coolant back into the system. Therefore, none of that coolant gets lost. Some of the benefits of having an expansion tank are, one, just increasing the capacity of the system itself, and two, having a more convenient fill point. So now, on the other hand, if you have a recovery tank or overflow tank, it does exactly what it's called. So it's going to catch the overflow coolant when it comes out of that pressure cap. Once it gets too much pressure built up, it's going to have some coolant spilling over. It's just going to go directly into your overflow tank. So now, when it does that, it's going to kind of create a vacuum. So when the pressure lowers back down inside of the radiator and the coolant, then that coolant will actually get sucked back into the system. Also, there are some vehicles out there that do have both an expansion tank and an overflow tank. There you have it, guys. This is a quick overview of your radiator cap and your expansion tanks or recovery tanks. And just a little tidbit here. Again, the coolant system is a closed system, so nothing should be getting burned or getting lost. So if your coolant is low, you have an issue with your system somewhere. If you have a leak, make sure to look underneath your vehicle. It's usually a bright fluorescent color. They usually dye it to make sure that you notice it, because it is very toxic to animals and humans. So make sure you get that cleaned up right away and dispose of it the right way. Also, it has a sweet smell. So again, that kind of draws animals to it as well. So if you smell something sweet, make sure you get that checked out. Otherwise, thanks for joining, guys. We'll dig deeper into the coolant system next week. We'll see you guys there. Bye.